from the session of Power Lunch. Just a quick disclaimer, this call is being recorded and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And I would really appreciate if I'm not paying attention, please let people in, as this is both for Microsoft uh, people as well as for anybody from who's not from Microsoft. Okay. So here's our topic of discussion today. We're going to be talking about how we can use network security parameter and private link to protect um, Azure resources. And what are some of the features on one side which kind of you can use or the other side? And I don't want to make it as a comparison, but what are the use cases where you will use probably one service more than other? Okay, we're gonna start with a quick introduction of these services. Just spend a few minutes. Then we are gonna go into the how they work together and where you may wanna use one or the other. And there's a quick demo just to do a level set. Okay, and please feel free to ask. Please feel free to ask if you have any questions. So first of all, private link. This is Microsoft service that allows private connectivity to um, SaaS services. So, for example, you have a storage account, you need to connect to it. Um, you create a private endpoint to it, drop it in a VNet, and you can access it just like the service exists inside your VNet. Okay. At the same time, if that VNet is connected to on-prem, you can access that service from on-premise, just like this is a local service. This is very powerful service and it has support across a wide variety. I think almost every service that Azure has supports private endpoint where it makes sense. And actually, all the new services that are coming up, they are also supporting these private endpoint. And at that point, there is no public exposure. So nobody, once you have a private endpoint, you can optionally disable public access. So there's no public exposure. Everything happens through that private endpoint interaction with that service. Okay, your traffic is secure. Kind of a very simple way. You have a PaaS service, a public PaaS service. You're accessing it over public internet. At the Now you created a private endpoint, drop it into the VNet, and now your application that are running inside the VNet or anything that is connected to the VNet can access that service as a private service. Just keep in mind, there is a cost associated with it. I know, and there are two costs basically. One is a fixed cost, which is the private endpoint fee. Okay, that doesn't change. That's like $7 a month or something. And then there is a bandwidth cost. Just keep in mind that cost varies as you push more or less data through the pipe, through the private endpoint pipe. Okay. So that's that. That's private endpoint. Just keep in mind that it only controls the inbound side of it. Your service may have outbound traffic that will not be controlled by the private endpoint. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Now let's go to network security parameter. This is a relatively new service. It has gone GA for some of the resources like storage. And what this service allows you to do, so think of a scenario where you have some PaaS resources like a storage account, a key vault, you have for example, an AI search that is using that storage account. You may have a log analytics service where you are writing data to the log, all of that. And you need to make sure that these services only interact with each other and nothing outside. Not Nobody can access them over the internet, and nobody can access at the same time these services cannot access outside this boundary. What you can do is you can assert centralized access control. You can put them inside an NSP. You can define rules on it, both inbound, and just keep in mind this is very important, both inbound rules and outbound rules. So what you do with the NSP is you define what inbound IP addresses can access it or ranges can access it. You can set that up. And at the same time, you can set the outbound IP address ranges as well. Sorry, outbound FQDN as well. So what it can access outside. Okay, all of these are set up. So now you are controlling traffic to this service. And also on top of it, it provides you two modes. One is called transition. It used to be called learning mode, and the other one is enforced. So with transition, you basically apply these rules in a what we call it like only to log. So what happens is you see who is violating those, what is violating those rules. So let's say that there were some IP addresses that you missed and you see that okay they are coming in, okay these IP addresses are not in the range, or there were FQDNs which were the needs to access these services which were not in the rules, or other way around you may have some FQDNs that you don't want them to access and they're accessing it, or there are IP addresses they're trying to come in, so you can kind of a loosen the rules or make them more strict, all of that, and then you do the enforce mode. So that's a very powerful feature of NSP. And one thing, as I said, it not only control inbound, it also control the outbound traffic. So that's a key point. Think of it. You have self pass services. Now they can have secure source to source communication. There is no need to have private endpoints or anything between them, and they can have source without going outside of that boundary that you have established. Okay, thus, you can stop data exfiltration if that is an issue that you are worrying about, because nobody can go outside that boundary. They can only exchange data within it. That's that. And finally, there is no additional cost to it. Just keep that in mind. NSP, oh, by the way, NSP, if you look, that is the same base service built on the private link platform, and but there's no cost associated with it. So you can create this NSP, you can set those up. There will not be an extra charge. And one thing I want to mention, and you will see it from the diagram that I have put up, that private link and NSP can work together. So let's say that this is this just like I described, you have a storage account that is used by an AI search service. There's a keyword which has the CMK, customer managed keys, to encrypt the data in the storage account. Then there is a log analytics where you are sending the logs and all of that sitting inside a NSP. They're interacting with each other. All the access inbound and outbound is controlled. Okay? So what then happens is that let's say that somebody needs that access to the storage account through a private endpoint, because that there may be a service running in another subnet that needs access that still not support NSP, or maybe they need access to on-prem, need to access the storage account on-prem, and NSP will not come into picture there. So they can create a private endpoint and they can drop it inside a VNet, connect it to on-prem through express route or site-to-site VPN, and here we go. We have private link established from that storage. And remember this, it's a very important point, that NSP will not impact your um, uh, private link. It will not impact private endpoint. Okay, the only thing it impacts is inbound and outbound public access. Okay, so that will be impacted, but if you have a private endpoint, that will not be impacted. So just keep that in mind. So just wanna quickly show not how to set it up, but I already have a NSP setup I want to show, and then we will go into the details of like what are some of the use cases where they can both come into picture, or one of them will be a part of the solution. So this is my NSP, and these are my associated. Okay, hold on a second. For some reason I was having issues with that. So we go in here, these are the associated resources. As you can see, this is enabled. It shows like this because I haven't, it's in still transition mode. So it's a kind of a learning mode. It's not truly applied, okay? And you can see what are some of the inbound rule for that NSP. So these three resources, I'm allowing it from here, and I am just allowing outbound traffic from there. So get the idea. You can have more complex rules, and you can set all of that up for your set of services. At the same time, if we go into the storage account in the networking, as you can see here, it tells you, I mean, that NSP is set up, it is in transition. There's one inbound, one outbound rule, and at the same time, we have a private endpoint set up as well. As I said, private endpoint will continue to function no matter what NSP rule that you set up, because private endpoint is a dependent of NSP. You can use both of them together. So there can be services. And if you have a restriction like that, then you should not be using private endpoint. If you want to say, hey, I just want to maintain all the traffic, just keep in mind, NSP is mainly controlling traffic coming in or going out to the internet. That's what it is doing. Okay, and making sure that all the resources can communicate with each other. Okay, so with that, with quick uh, uh, demo of that, let's take a look at some of the use cases. What are some of the things that you may do or you may not do with oh, by the way, any questions, folks? Sorry, I'm just rambling on and on. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's talk about the NSP and private link. And I just keep in mind, there's I don't want to say okay, in a matter like what service is better or not. Is the use case where you will be using that service. So what defines, let's say, the scope of protection? For example, you have tens of PaaS resources which is a part of an application that need to talk to each other, but you need to control access to all of them in a centralized way. One way, and they're living in different subnets and things like that. That's the thing. So, how you do that? In that scenario, probably using an NSP makes sense, because you can put that inside a network security parameter. All of these services are running, are kind of surrounded by this NSP, so they can interact with each other, but at the same time, they cannot interact outside except whatever rules that you can establish. And same thing, inbound traffic abide by the same rules. Okay, so that you can do. If you have PaaS, I mean, in that scenario, PaaS will come, sorry, private link will come into the picture where you have individual resources, like you have few storage accounts that need to be accessed from on-prem or from different services where NSP is not supported. That's where you bring in and you start building this architecture up, because if you have hundreds of resources, creating like private endpoint to each other sometimes becomes, or controlling access may become more complex than you think. Okay. In regards to the connectivity model, if you have entirely private inbound connectivity, just keep in mind private link is still the best option because it provides you entirely private connectivity. In the case of NSP, if you open firewall, the traffic will come, it may come over a private and public endpoint to those services, though you are allowing that traffic. So you understand what the risk is and what IP addresses you're allowing to access these services, uh, access to these services. In regards to granularity, as I said before, NSP is where you have collection of services, a group of resources. Okay, that's where NSP works best. If you have individual resources that you need to connect to, has resources, that's where private endpoint will come into picture. And I came across a very interesting scenario. We came across a very interesting scenario with a large customer where they have a bunch of storage accounts and they're part of data lake where they're writing uh, tens of terabytes of data every day, and they were using private endpoints to write that data. Okay, so private endpoint, as I said, has a cost associated with it. And for that, let me just show you how little things can become very big once we go into the scale of things. So for example, you have this private endpoint. Yes, monthly cost is uh, $7.30, and then you have, let's say, 10 GB data going back and forth input on that private endpoint. I mean, you're sending data, then data is coming out, returned by the private endpoint. Let's say it's a service or something. Okay, good, not big, not much, but let's change these dimensions. Now let me tell you, that will explain what we came across. Let's say it's a 10 terabyte, you know, now it's a significant amount of data. I mean, now we are talking about around $210 a month. Okay, that becomes like $2,500 a year. And if we go a little bit, I mean, let's say that you have tens of these accounts, 10, 20 accounts. Now we are talking about a significant amount of money, like $50,000. So that's where I mean, that's where probably an NSP based architecture can save you money because remember, NSP doesn't have the the cost. I mean, you have, and as long as these services are in the same region, I mean, there's no bandwidth cost. So let's say you put the NSP umbrella around it, kind of the circle around it, put them under this NSP at the network security parameter, now you can avoid these costs. Okay, so this is one scenario that we came across with a very large customer. So I just want to share. So that's where, so for example, as I said, just to summarize, by the way, any questions before I go any further?
I have
Let
a
me
quick
see.
question, but I see
Please.
Joe posted something, so I'll let him go
Okay.
first.
Yeah,
Yes.
hi.
Go ahead, please.
Thanks for that. So, are you saying that and to use an example, say something like Nerdio, where we're securing Nerdio using private endpoints for the key
Hmm.
vault, for the databases, for the
Hmm.
applications, for the web apps, and what have you? Are you saying that we could put an NSP in it to cover Nerdio? So
No,
instead of having
you
10 or
have to.
12.
Okay. Sorry, let me be very clear. So basically, uh, it's only the services that NSP support. At this point, it supports a handful of services: storage, AI search, key vault, and then log analytic workspaces. So whatever services that are there, you can put them under the umbrella of NSP, and the interaction between them will be secure. But any interaction that is they're doing outside or inside, you have to create rules. Got it? As long as those services support NSP.
Okay. And
Okay?
does it cover multiple subscriptions and landing
Yes,
zones?
yes, 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 they are. Actually, landing zone doesn't have any meaning there. I mean, this is kind of a thing that we use. Let me show you. If I go into the NSP, I can associate a resource and you can, give me a second. It's taking its sweet time. But if I go to the add button, you will see subscription. You see here, you see subscription, resource group. So you see what I'm saying? So you can bring in from different subscription as well. That's the power of it.
So
You know?
I just had a quick look there. In about 1/4 of our subscriptions, we have about 450 private endpoints with all of the complexity that comes into this. So you're saying that if we find all of the in support private endpoints, we could replace them
Yep.
with this.
If the services are interacting with each other, you can replace the private endpoint with NSP. But just I don't want to oversimplify it. You have to look at the architecture. For example, let's say that there are storage accounts. They're
Yeah,
accessed but they're accessed from outside. You know, then
no,
that's yeah.
it's so 95%, 99% of the resources that we have that I'm talking about would all be resources within that are just need to communicate within.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think you should definitely take a look at NSP. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Let's definitely take a look at it and see and like how it can help because yes, there's a fixed cost, so that's where as I see, it will reduce complexity and possibly can reduce costs. I don't want to oversell it, but yes, we saw that with one of the customers. So that's that. And there is another question.
Yeah, I have a
Sorry,
question, a
please go ahead.
verbal.
Oh, please go ahead.
Um, yeah, so I guess this is like the first time I've been introduced to NSPs. I know it's a newer type of resource, but so if I'm understanding right, is it only providing a security perimeter or a set of rule sets for inbound and outbound, accept or deny, or is it also providing a level of routing between
No,
disparate resources?
no. Very clear. Sorry. Routing, you
Because
have
I
to put,
guess,
yes.
yeah, just to,
No,
not
no
not to
routing.
cut you off, but I just want to clarify, like, let's say in your, do you have that deck that you had where you
Yeah,
show
yeah, yeah.
an architecture
Yeah. Let me show you.
um, with
Where's
all
the
the private
deck?
endpoints there?
This one?
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
So let's say you had these private endpoints, AI search, key vault, storage account, and they're all in separate subscriptions and separate networks and subnets.
Mm.
But then I saw you could associate resources, right, to the network security perimeter. And I'm getting confused about whether or not the perimeter is also providing the routability capability of any associated resource, or if it's only providing a fence.
It's only providing a fence. Just keep that in mind. So if you put them in that boundary, what's gonna happen is that they become like a public resource because their private. Oh, by the way, their private endpoint will still function, but they are inside that boundary. So there is no routing going on. They will be able to communicate with each other. Okay.
That's
So
only if they're private endpoints. But what if they're not private endpoints?
doesn't matter that because they don't need private endpoint to communicate. Yes, NSP don't need private endpoint to communicate. They communicate without using private endpoint. So that communication happens over Azure Fiber, network fiber. It doesn't go over public internet. So think of it. What you're saying is that, hey guys, I want these resources. They cannot communicate outside except to these FQDN. They can only these IP address can communicate to them, but they can communicate to each other. So now Azure, because since you are under this umbrella, Azure is saying, yeah, you can communicate to that.
Okay, so any resource that you associate into an NSP gets implicitly like allow inbound and
Yeah,
outbound just to those resources.
just to those, yes,
Yeah.
just to those
Now,
resources, yes.
so if there's like a priority rule listing like you get with like NSGs for inbound and outbound, do you see that anywhere or is it just
Okay.
implicit?
The thing is, now we are mixing two things up. These are
Sorry.
only for PaaS resources. No, that's a very good point. No. these are very good points because we are talking about PaaS resources. Okay, if it's a VM, we are not talking about VMs. We are talking about PaaS resources like storage, um, AI search, because they all can have private endpoints. So there's ways to communicate it. But let's say you don't want to do that. I mean, a very simple example is forget everything. AI search and storage account. You have to have a private endpoint if you want to communicate privately without NSP. Create a private endpoint into AI search, managed endpoints, and that's how AI search communicate to storage. Okay, that's how it works. But let's say that you don't want to use private endpoint. What you can do is put both AI search and storage into an NSG, and voila, they can communicate to each other. You can block all inbound and outbound traffic except to the endpoints or and slash FQDNs that you deem suitable. That's it. But when we are talking about virtual machines that are inside NSG or resources that are inside NSG, like VNet injected AS or something like that, ASV3, that's not yet covered. Maybe there is some things come out later on because this service is still evolving. Just keep in mind, only a few resources have been GA'd with this service.
Okay.
Okay, so just want to make sure everybody's expectations are
Yeah,
turned off.
I guess my original question, I think you're answering it. So if you had these PaaS services represented with private endpoints and disparate subnets, you aren't concerned with the routability of any NSGs that are on those subnets to affect the ability for the NSP to talk to each other.
Exactly, because at
Yeah,
that point, all of these private endpoints will work as usual. But the NSP will take over because as I showed you
it
here,
takes precedence. Okay,
yes,
all right,
I mean that the private endpoints are there. It's not going to block them, but if you look at this store networking, look, this is, this is here, and it says change. Yeah, public network. So I'm going to basically block all network access, but because right now in transition, okay, transition, it's still learning. But if I say enforced, it's going to automatically block all internet access. So now that will take precedence. NSP will take precedence. That's the thing. That's the main selling point that you don't have to go resource by resource and close it. You put it inside NSP, that's it. I hope it clarifies it. Because to be honest, devil is in the details. And as you go to different resources, yes, there will be more questions, but at this moment, it is only for public, um, um, certain public Azure services, not for VMs that are injected in VNets and things like that.
excellent. Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Any other questions, folks?
No, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, guys, thank you for joining and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Power Lunch. I learned a lot from this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
You too, sir.
All right,
You too.
take care.
Thank you.